Welcome to Konoha Crush, a clandestine effort to exhaustively research and document events occurring in and around the village hidden in the leaves. I'm Ruby.
I'm Gwen. Hi.
Hi, Gwen. How's it been since we last recorded?
It's good.
It's been pretty good, right? Yeah. Have you been up to anything?
Yeah, there's a webtoon I've been reading.
Oh, yeah. Really? What have you been reading?
It's called Burning Effect. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I didn't want to hear about this from anybody else, so I'm glad you're going to talk to me about it.
Okay. Yeah. So it's fun. It's about this punch girl.
Okay, solid start.
Named Burner.
Okay, good name for a girl.
Who beats up cops in a world where, like, the authoritarian government made it so that any crime is punishable, like, immediately by death.
Okay.
And it's just, like, really fun. It's really stylish. There's a Catholic dog.
Okay. It's like 0.3 after fun and stylish, is that there is a Catholic dog.
Yeah.
This is the third most essential thing you should know about.
A Catholic dog who is part of, like, a revolutionary group, who also shoots guns really well.
Okay, is this dog like a normal dog or like a furry dog person?
No, he's like a person.
Okay. All right. Okay. That's good to clarify.
Mm-hmm. It's just really cool, and, like, you know, that's basically the only thing I haven't talked about yet, so there's my thing this week.
Sometimes you're just reading some shit and you're like, damn, this is sick. I've been reading more Berserk.
Hell yeah. Speaking of damn,
yeah.
This is sick.
Yeah, it's kind of sick. It's really been like an experience of reading Berserk. Like in a lot of ways, like perhaps first among them is like sometimes you're just reading some shit and like it's just very like effective at what it's doing, and it's like good that you get like you get that beautiful mix of like excitement and like kind of despondent about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, I'm reading Berserk and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing making a Naruto podcast? Who am I? My Naruto podcast is nowhere near as good as this comic. These are like valuable things to compare. I mean, like I'm like very impressed with it. Like I think I'm like, I guess I couldn't say exactly for sure because I don't know when stuff happens, but I think I'm sort of on the verge of like everything going to shit in terms of like when that happens in the comic. Like Griffith's in like torture prison and like Guts just came back.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like, you know, it's gonna get rough in there pretty soon, but like...
Uh-huh.
No, I've been having a great time reading it. I think like... A very weird thing about reading Berserk when I have like this big cultural idea of like what Berserk is like, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of times where that cultural idea is just wrong. Because, you know, like growing up as a person who went on like TV tropes and shit and saw people talking about, you know, whatever there was just definitely this like idea like Berserk is like this super fucked up, constant violence, edgy comic where terrible things happen nonstop, and it is like such a people talking about their feelings comic.
Yeah.
In a way that I'm like very much all about, right? Like, you know, people will go off and they'll do like a fucking badass fight and they'll like bisect a knight with a big sword or whatever, and then they'll like talk about their feelings for a while, and it's like, hell yeah. I love when they talk about their feelings.
Yeah, it's... Berserk is a really good comic, everyone. Hi.
Yeah. I think the other like weird point of dissonance is like... I mean, like, I know enough about Berserk to know eventually there will be a point where Griffith is a guy who I am less excited to see the things he's doing, at least for a little while, right? Like, it's kind of hard to avoid the sort of knowledge by osmosis that, like, eventually he's gonna do some shit that I'm not really all about.
Yeah.
But like, even knowing that, like, I feel like I'm just walking into, like, a big obvious trap that's been set for me because I see Griffith on page like at the part that I'm at. I'm like, this guy's kind of awesome. Like,
yeah, and then the whole rest of the comic is like he kind of goes back to being like that a little bit. You know, sorry for spoilers, but it's like
it's a more complicated thing, I imagine.
Yeah, am I supposed? Do I like him again?
Right, like I guess I'm like curious and kind of excited to have that sort of like dialogue with myself and then maybe with you as I'm on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's definitely this thing where it's like, going in, I'm like, okay, I kind of know the deal, so maybe I should try to like be at some level of removed from this character. But then he shows up and he's like this ridiculous dramatic anime twink who's like making all these speeches about his grand ambition and having this like extreme gay tension that he has no idea how to like really resolve in any way that doesn't sort of distance himself from the people he cares about. And it's like candy to me. It's like wonderful. It's
yeah.
I mean, it's not great for him. It doesn't seem like all the time, but
yeah, no, he's in a really bad place right now where you're reading.
No, yeah, he's in a torture dungeon. He's been there for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's fine.
Is it fine?
He gets better.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I've heard this. I mean, he was like floating in a demon dimension at the beginning of the comic, and that seemed like it was better than a torture dungeon, maybe?
Who can say?
Who can say? I guess I'll learn. But the last thing I want to say about Berserk, I guess, before we move on, is like a thing I'm very enamored by. This might actually be the last thing I have to say about Berserk before we move on. I thought of some other things I want to say. Sorry. But the thing I'm very enamored with is like the way in which it doesn't really burden itself with a lot of the particulars of what's going on if they're not relevant to the characters immediately. Because there's a lot of parts of that comic where Guts is just a guy who's like going around and he's fighting and he's like being a mercenary and he's getting into battles. And like, you don't really get any context for what those battles are or like where he's fighting or like who he's fighting for. He's just kind of showing up and he's chopping up dudes and he's getting paid, and that's like his level of investment.
Yeah, it's good because it doesn't fucking matter. Who gives a shit?
Right. Like we only get like snippets of that when it's like, okay, well, Griffith is on screen. We're getting stuff about Griffith's ambition, so we learn about that stuff to the extent that it matters to him. But even then, we don't have like a lot of like it never really cuts away to just be like, all right, here's the history of this war that's happening. It's just kind of like you get what the characters say, and I think that's very refreshing because I think a lot of fantasy storytelling can get really bogged down in that.
Yeah.
I think there's like this really great crystallization of that thing where there's this arc where Griffith is like trying to take this like fortress that's gone untaken for like 100 years or whatever, and he's at the strategy meeting and all of these people are like just hugely concerned about this and like so worried and like talking about how like it's probably just like a fucking like a doomed enterprise to even try, and we cut to Guts like who's like basically like in a different scene like with the rest of the band of the Hawk, and they're like just sort of talking about that, and some of them are kind of concerned, but he's just like, who gives a shit? It's a place. It's just a place he's gonna go and chop up dudes, right? It's not like he's saying this because he's just like he's the badass guy who comes in and like is disaffected by all of it and he just chops up guys and that's who he is. It's just like it's not relevant to him, he's got shit he cares about personally, and it's not like what's going on with this impregnable fortress for 100 years. That's nothing to him. He's just a guy.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is the actual last thing I have to say before we get into talking about Naruto. Okay. But I guess like for me, a lot of the time when I like sort of fall really head over heels for something, not all the time, but a lot of the time it's stuff that is like very like heavily stylized and very like a little more experimental in his visuals, a little more like loose and evocative. Like the last comic I really was like super in on like this was Blue Period by Tsubasa Yamaguchi, which is very much like it's.
I need to keep reading Blue Period so bad. I read like
you should. That comic is fucking great, and then you should talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I read like the first 2 chapters and then just kind of stopped for no reason.
It's like amazing, but like it is a very different comic than Berserk, which is like which is such a self-evident statement that it feels kind of ridiculous to say. But like and that is like the sort of thing that I find myself going for a lot more often. And like it's interesting to read Berserk, which is a comic that is just so direct in a lot of ways. Like I don't mean to say this in any way like derogatorily or like like as a put down of the comic, but like it is very much like just here's the drawings and like fairly straightforward layouts that are like just used for this really incredible sense of like directness and clarity in terms of like the emotional content being conveyed and the story being conveyed. And it's just like I don't know, it is like very cool and like equally impressive to something that is way more that is way more out there. To see something that is just kind of like plainly executing on what it's trying to do very well. I don't know, it's cool. I like comics a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Instead of talking about comics, it's time to talk about anime that's based on comics.
Yeah. Okay, let's just get right to the episode then.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Episode 51, A Shadow in Darkness. Danger approaches Sasuke. The fight starts, and Choji knows Dosu's tricks, but it doesn't really help. Dosu takes him out in one attack, and the preliminary round is now complete. Kabuto has a chat with Orochimaru about their plans going forward, and takes on the task to capture Sasuke. Maybe he wants to kill Sasuke instead? Maybe he doesn't. The Hokage tells the Chunin candidates that the final round will be in 1 month, to give them time to recover and figure out some new tricks. Naruto steels himself for the hard work ahead of him.
Alright, yeah, so the Dosu and Choji fight is over, like, extremely, extremely quickly. It's, like, kind of jarring how little they do to try and draw it out. Like, every other fight in the preliminaries is, on some level, kind of, it extended it to, like, a whole big thing. Or not like a whole big thing, but, like, at least half an episode, you know?
Yeah.
I guess except for Kankuro's fight. But, like, most of the other ones. This fight just kind of blazes through, like, the last 10 pages of, like, the chapter where this happens in, like, 3 minutes, and then it's just done, and we don't linger on it at all. It is definitely the fastest any of our episodes are going to, like, cover a part of the manga this week. And this is, Dosu comes out on top, and this is his final win ever. It's not going well for him ever again at any point in his life. No. He just barely makes it through this week's episodes, by which I mean, like,
he would have been better off if he just let Choji squish him.
Yeah, he's like, I gotta go. I mean, okay, like, that's really only, like, I'm thinking about how it goes down for his teammates, and that doesn't seem like a really long-term beneficial thing for him. It doesn't, but, like, Dosu's final non-corpse scene is, like, within one of the chapters adapted in this week's episodes. It's just they didn't do that scene, and just kind of, like, saved it off for later. So he just barely survived this week. I don't think we're gonna get much more alive Dosu next week.
So sad.
So sad for him. Yeah. After the fight, the preliminaries are concluded, and Kakashi's like, gotta go. He's got shit to handle. And there's this little moment where he's talking to Sakura, like, hey, Sakura, I'm gonna need you to pay attention to what the finals are, because I can't be here, and, like, I don't know that Naruto's gonna pay close enough attention to tell Sasuke what's up, so, like, can you just pay attention to that for me? And Sakura's, like, clearly very worried about everything, but she's like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And that's basically the last thing Sakura gets to do this whole arc.
Yeah, right. Fucking, you don't give any fucking attention to the girl in your squad until it's time to fucking give her a menial task.
Yeah, she's like worried about Sasuke. She's like, hey, is Sasuke gonna be okay? And Kashi's like, we don't really know. And Kashi's like, yep, it's up to Sasuke, because he's still on that. He's just kind of relying on that still.
Yeah.
Anyway, we cut away from that room. We go to fucking freak chat.
Freak chat.
Freak chat. I love this scene. I love, like, mostly just I love the vibes of Orochimaru and Kabuto being, like, extremely dramatic with each other and just sort of, like, talking around shit. I have such a fondness for guys standing in a room together and not saying anything. And there's a lot of really great stuff with that here.
Yeah.
But there's also, like, some stuff that they say that I think is, like, kind of interesting. Like, there's a bit where Orochimaru talks about how the hidden leaf is in, like, this peaceful era, and how it's, like, being really weak because of that, and how it's, like, it is less committed to, like, training new soldiers and, like, increasing the size of its military as the rest of the, like, major hidden villages are.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of have to wonder if that is, like, supposed to be a gesture at, like, oh, here's a way that the hidden leaf is better than average. And I don't know that I buy that as, like, like, I don't know that I really buy that, but it's the sort of thing I'm paying attention to because like I remember at the end of the arc there being some sort of like big gesture towards the idea that like there's something special about the hidden leaf and the way it like like cares for the child soldiers it trains. And so I'm looking for anything to gesture towards that because nothing so far has really led to me buying into that idea, and I don't know if like training child soldiers at a smaller rate is really going to do that for me either. But
yeah, no, like the like counter examples we see of like how the other villages treat their shit is like cartoon villain stuff. So like,
yeah, it's like okay, I guess you get technically passing grades for not making them graduate elementary school by murdering each other, but like
yeah.
Like, those are the especially bad guys, right? Like, we don't know what's going on with, like... There's, like, at least 2 villages we, like, basically have no idea what's going on. Like, they're 2, like, major villages.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just don't feel like we have enough information to really, like, make this claim that Orochimaru is making feel like it means anything.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's, like... It's definitely the kind of thing where it's just, like... Well, he said it, so it must be true. This is like a thing that we're bringing up now, so that the rest of the story makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is interesting is like, there's this bit where like, Kabuto is talking about how like all of basically like all of the major villages are like more or less on the brink of war, and how Orochimaru must like want to use Sasuke as like a bullet to kick all of that off.
Yeah, I wanted to mention this.
Yeah, what did you have to say about this?
Does Naruto have guns?
That's a good question. They do like literally say bullet, don't they?
And trigger.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to think of if there's like guns, guys.
Are guns allowed at the Chunin exams?
Like I know somewhere else in the world there's like villages that have like samurai instead of ninja. Maybe like even like further away there's villages that have like cowboys instead of ninja.
Yeah.
They just sort of like vaguely know about guns, but nobody's that invested in guns either.
You see, I draw my chakra into this here 6-shooter.
Fuck yes. Fuck yes. What I think is interesting about like Orochimaru talking, or about like this like vision of what Orochimaru's plans are, is that like this isn't really what happens, and I don't even mean that in the sense of like, oh, I guess they just forgot about this, because I guess what actually winds up happening in the grand scheme of Naruto is that like Orochimaru's goal is to I guess plunge the world into war for some like nebulous purpose, just gets so badly sidetracked, and by the time he is in a place to do that again, he just doesn't care as much. Which is very funny to me to think about.
Yeah, he doesn't care as much, and then the world gets, like, fucky for other reasons.
Yeah. But, I guess I'm a little curious to see if there's, like, more stuff in this arc that points towards that, like, more political, like, trying to cause war everywhere, like, motivation for Orochimaru. Because, like, it's... The point in the show where he's acting on that, if it exists at all, is, like, very limited. And, I guess I want to see what's there.
Yeah. I am curious what his whole deal is. Like, I know what his deal is.
Right. But, like, his deal is, like, very, like... I feel like his deal going forward is, like, very contingent upon how this arc winds up playing out.
Yeah.
And so I definitely am in the same boat of, like, I'm curious, what this guy would have wanted if he didn't have to, like, kind of course correct to, like... trying to like stay alive in the more immediate sense that he like is kind of forced into at the end of this arc.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of Orochimaru's plan is that he needs Kabuto to kidnap Sasuke because he's like, hey, so I've noticed that like Sasuke is like making a friend that puts him in like a really dangerous position of like he might become normal. I can't have that.
It would be so scary if Sasuke became normal.
At all costs, we must prevent Sasuke from becoming normal.
Hey, Kabuto, do you think you could, like, dress up as Sasuke's brother and go and kill someone else he loves? Just to, like, remind him?
Yeah, hey, he should have, like... He should have done that, but I guess he's more interested in being, like, a dramatic freak, because we get this really great moment where he, like, after he tells Kabuto to kidnap Sasuke, he's like, or you could kill Sasuke. That would really fuck with my plans. And Kabuto's just kind of like looking at him. It's like, but you'd never betray me, right? And just kind of like winks at him. And Kabuto's like, yeah, I never betray you. And like winks at him back. It's just literally wink at him, but it's just very like ridiculous energy of like, hey, I fucking dare you to betray me, bro.
Yeah.
It'd be really funny. That's amazing. Like, I am just like, I'm so delighted whenever Orochimaru is on screen. He's just a ridiculous guy.
Yeah, right? Like, at first I was just sticking around because of the estrogen, right?
Mm-hmm. But now I think he's really funny.
Yeah, he's really funny.
I guess the last thing I should talk about in this half of the episode is, we get back to the room where the preliminaries are being held, and third Hokage is talking about how there's going to be a month break so everybody can like train and develop new techniques and like develop ways to like counter the techniques they saw and all of that. And I feel like this is kind of like, I mean, the tournament at the end of this doesn't really play out, but I can't help but feel like it's kind of a way, like a missed opportunity to have like more of that thing we talked about briefly with like Kakashi and Zabuza, where they're like coming up with counters to each other's shit for the next time they fight each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like basically nobody other than Naruto and Sasuke can go into the like tournament like of this with anything new. I think I just think it would be really fun to have another moment where like everybody's come up with shit to like stop the other like participants' techniques, and they've come up with like ways to like prevent their techniques from being stopped. I think it would be like it would be a fun layer to a tournament that I guess ultimately doesn't happen, so it doesn't matter that much. But
yeah. Well, I mean, we still get like a few rounds of it, right? Like,
yeah, we do get some of the fights, and it does definitely feel like like I don't think Neji's coming up with any new techniques, and I guess he's not really the guy who would come up with new techniques to fight Naruto.
Yeah,
but even so,
I mean, and same with Gaara. Like Gaara hasn't learned a new technique in like since he was born.
Yeah, he's just kind of been on like an auto burger pilot.
Yeah, and like obviously we haven't gotten there yet, but like they see the bracket and everything.
I do want to talk about that bracket, but I think that's something for the next half of the episode.
Yeah. Speaking of the next half of the episode, do you want to go ahead and get to it?
Let's go for it.
All right. Kabuto shows up at the hospital and confronts an unconscious Sasuke. He looks like he's intending something sinister with a scalpel when Kakashi shows up. Kakashi tries to intimidate him into surrendering, but Kabuto knows he has the upper hand and puts a knife to Sasuke's neck. Kakashi rushes in and disarms him, but one of the Anbu corpses starts running. Kakashi corners it with a shadow clone, and another corpse leaps out the window, this one being the real Kabuto in disguise. The other bodies fall limp, and Kakashi's pretty impressed this 19-year-old can puppet bodies that skillfully. Back in the arena, the kids are assigned their places on the bracket for the third round. And obviously Naruto goes up against Neji right away. The Hokage explains that the candidates will be judged on their performance, and don't necessarily need to win to become Chunin. Naruto goes to Kakashi for training, but he's busy with Sasuke, so he asked Ebisu to help. Neither Ebisu nor Naruto are too happy about it.
Yeah, so in this half of the episode, we open up on Kabuto going to Sasuke's hospital room, and there's a few things I want to touch on before anything really happens in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the first is that, like, I'm kind of on Kabuto watch, right? Like, I'm trying to... I think I talked about this before, where Kabuto is a character who I just kind of don't think about that much, in spite of how large his presence in Naruto is, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Like, he's in theory a very important guy that I just don't really have, like, a super strong grasp of his deal, and I just don't think about. So I'm going to try this time to see if I can get, like, a better grasp on this guy. Because now that I'm talking extensively about, like, every 3 episodes of Naruto forever, I feel like this is my best shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's, like, some, in theory, very interesting... Like, I think there's some potentially interesting stuff here where he's, like he's talking to Sasuke and he comes across as, like, kind of resentful that, like, both him and Sasuke are, like, people who have, like, who have caught Orochimaru's attention. Like, given the way that Orochimaru has conducted himself throughout the Chunin exams, you very easily get the impression that if Orochimaru is interested in a guy, like, the Hidden Leaf Village isn't going to be able to do shit to stop that from playing out.
Oh, absolutely not.
And so, you know, it's like, I'm interested in seeing more about how Kabuto feels like this, because I don't think Kabuto's deal is even that he was necessarily, like, a talented, or at least not necessarily just that he was, like, a talented guy that caught Orochimaru's eye or anything. But, you know, I don't know. I guess I want to see, like, where this sort of, like, conflicted and sort of like resentful position he's in with Orochimaru, like how that plays out if it really goes anywhere at all. And the other thing about Kabuto's hospital visit that I want to talk about is that Orochimaru is just fucking standing there like the sickos guy outside the window.
Yeah.
Like he's just looking directly into the window, not disguised at all, fucking grinning like an idiot, rubbing his hands together. And he's like, yes.
Like just broad daylight too, just standing on the roof across the street.
I need to see if this guy killed this 12-year-old. It'll be really funny either way.
Like the part where Kabuto jumps out the window, right? And then Kakashi like rushes over to the window to like look down after him.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He just looks up a little bit and fucking
Orochimaru's there. He's just laughing. He's just losing his shit. Like Kakashi gets into this room right before Kabuto leaves. Kakashi gets into this room, and Kakashi really tries to play this cool. He's like, "Whoa, hey, it looks pretty bad that you've got a knife pointed at this sleeping 12-year-old. Let's talk about this. If you don't answer my questions right, I might have to take you in." And Kabuto is just like, I mean, look, you can't prove that I'm doing anything illegal, so you should just let me go and do more spy shit. I got a credit for trying. It doesn't seem like anybody in the Hidden Leaf really knows what a spy is, so he should shoot a shot in this one.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they're not really having it, so they just kind of go to like fighting for a bit. And we get a moment where in this scene, I think Kabuto really comes across as like, oh hey, this guy is like actually really good at what he does and really competent. Like it is like a cool series of like ninja tricks to be like, oh yeah, I'm actually piloting every corpse in this room to just do stunts. And the one you thought was me was just like a guy who did extremely fast facial reconstruction surgery on to look exactly like me.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, in earlier, Orochimaru directly called out that like Kabuto was only about as strong as Kakashi.
Mm-hmm. But like his particular talents are like applied in a very like cool way that like I don't know, I think his like corpse tricks are very neat and
yeah, I love a good corpse trick.
And I'm curious if Kabuto is ever this guy again, right? Like there's a lot of like stuff with Kabuto in this arc that feels like it doesn't really there's definitely a thing in the scene, at least one thing in the scene that feels like it doesn't really get followed up on, where Kakashi sees Kabuto jump out of the window and he's like, damn, if Orochimaru's guys are this good, I gotta like try and keep up, right? Like it's like another like sort of rivalry hinted at in this arc that never goes anywhere because I don't think Kakashi and Kabuto ever like have a big fight.
That's a shame.
Maybe I'm forgetting something, but like I don't think that's like a direction that the show ever goes. But like I'm curious to see if like Kabuto is ever doing these kind of like freak tricks again because I think they're like really fun.
I want Kakashi to beg for the teenager so fucking bad.
Yeah, right. Oh, that'd be great. Like Kakashi really needs a guy who he's like sort of like antagonistic with, who's like he just thinks is like a really annoying kid. I think that would really that'd be like a great spot for him to be in.
We gotta talk about this fucking bracket.
Throughout the whole preliminaries, we kept going like, yeah, I bet they're just like rigging these matches for the drama. But I'm like looking at this tournament bracket and I'm starting to question that a little bit, because this seems like a bad tournament bracket if you want like people invested the whole way through, right? Like, is that the vibe you're getting too?
Yeah, right. Because like, what are the matches again? It's like Naruto and Neji.
Like Naruto, Neji, Gaara, and Sasuke are all on one side of the bracket. So like that's like, I mean, Naruto isn't really that in like the eyes of the world, like in the fictional setting.
Yeah.
But like 3 of those guys are like the big guys in this tournament, and so you've created a bracket where you've like taken out like all but one of your big heavy hitters before the finals if you're like booking this for people to be interested in. And on the other side of the bracket, it's like I don't know who goes to the end there. Like Shino, Tamari, like
yeah, who fucking knows?
Who fucking knows? Like regardless, nobody on that side of the bracket is really going to be like putting up a fight against the guys on like the side with like all of the most important characters in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean the real reason the bracket is like that is because they don't go to the finals.
Yeah, right. Like it is like if you know where this is going, it's like very transparently like, oh, okay, this is just to get all of the things that like we need in place. Like get the few fights that are important to let play out before we move on to the next stage of this arc.
But like they don't know that.
Yeah, right. Are all the guys that are inviting just guys who like kind of get checked out after a while? So it's like, okay, we got to get the best matches like in round one because like all the feudal lords are just gonna kind of be like fucking sleeping if we wait till like if that point till the final round.
Yeah, and like I know it was like fucking pulling fucking paper out of a hat or whatever.
I guess it was pulling paper out of a hat, so they didn't really like set it up.
Yeah, but
so my at least at that level are like not very grounded. I just remembered.
Yeah, but like they're fucking shinobi. They could do tricks. It could have just been a trick to make sure nobody fucking complained about the matchups.
No, I didn't remember that when I was saying all of this because I like when I was writing about this in my notes, I was like, oh yeah, this is like this is like if this was a bracket that played out, it would not be very interesting, and I just sort of like assigned that to like a fictional thing. But I guess it was technically random still, but And in that case, I guess it mostly boils down to is like, yeah, this is a tournament bracket that is not designed to go to the conclusion because nobody wants to see the final match of like Gaara versus a guy with bugs. Because like the bugs are pretty good, but I feel like in that matchup the bugs are just kind of worse sand.
Yeah, the bugs are kind of just worse sand.
Anyway, like Ebisu shows up at the end of this episode, but I feel like next episode is really like the place to talk about that just because that's like basically the Ebisu episode.
Yeah.
So let's get into that.
Okay. Episode 52. Ebisu returns. Naruto's toughest training yet. Naruto doesn't want to train with Ebisu because he already got his ass that one time. Kakashi tries to reassure him that Ebisu is actually a really good teacher and points out that despite his strengths, Naruto still has really rough fundamentals. Kakashi heads out, but Naruto still doesn't want to learn under Ebisu, so Ebisu issues a challenge. All Naruto has to do is run away, but if Ebisu catches him, it'll prove he's capable of teaching. Naruto takes off running, and after some roof hopping, loudly declares he's lost him, only for Ebisu to interject from a higher perch. His next play involves using transformation jutsu to hide against a billboard. Ebisu sees through it, so Naruto makes a bunch of shadow clones, and they scatter. Ebisu makes a couple of his own and starts catching clones left and right, eventually cornering the real one in the stream running through town.
So I think that was very funny to think about with regards to the situation of like Kakashi setting up Naruto with Ebisu. It's like Kakashi doesn't fucking know shit. Like he like probably thinks he crushed this. He's like, all right, Naruto is the kid who wants to be the Hokage really badly, and I can set him up with his teacher who is like, he talks about his family is all these Hokage candidates. It's going to be an easy sell. It's good. Like I did so good. I get to go fucking, I get to go and like handle his other shit. I get to go pay attention to Sasuke, who's like in a rough situation right now. It's fine. Like he doesn't fucking know. It's kind of amazing how much he's just like, oh shit, what did I walk into here? When when Naruto and Ebisu show up in the hospital lobby and are like immediately pissed at each other. like both of them just like, okay, I need to figure out how to make Naruto be cool with it. It's also like, okay, why does my colleague have this huge beef with a 12-year-old?
Yeah, why does this guy who is like a more prestigious guy than me have beef with this 12-year-old?
Yeah. And like, Naruto is a guy who like more people than average in the village have beef with. Like he is probably the 12-year-old that most adults have beef with. But you gotta expect some amount of professionalism from like a guy who's at that tier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, from there we get like more classics of Kakashi not really knowing how to like handle Naruto, like in a less dramatic context than the last time it happens. But he's just kind of like, Naruto, like I'm like actually a pretty bad teacher, and you really got your basics to work on, and I gotta go handle some shit. So like, how about you two figure this out? And it doesn't really work at all.
No.
Kakashi doesn't know shit. I love him.
At least he's trying to fucking hand Naruto off to a guy who does, but like...
Yeah.
Like, we've talked about how that, like, should be the Jonin's, like, number one, like, thing, is being able to, like, hook the students up with someone who knows how to handle their shit.
Yeah, like, recognize people who, like... recognize what their students need and like put them in touch with that. And, like he is, yeah, like he is sort of doing this for Naruto, even if Naruto isn't the most receptive to it, and also he like accidentally chose the comedy option, and also
Yeah.
So if he could do anything for soccer, he'd really be on the right path here.
He won't.
He won't. Yeah. So I guess now that we're past the sort of like introductory part of the episode, I want to sort of like talk more broadly about the structure. Both this episode and the next one are like both really expanding out from a single chapter, and this one sort of takes on the task of trying to make Ebisu seem like a little more capable guy, like a little more of a guy you can take seriously at all. And maybe it tries to make him seem like a little more personable and like nicer to Naruto in ways that don't really come across in the manga. Because you got to do something with him here.
Yeah. So like in the manga, you mentioned that like this episode of the next was just like one chapter.
No, this episode is one chapter, and the next episode is one chapter.
Okay.
It's two chapters across each of them, but they're each adapting one chapter.
That makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm. I
was about to be like, that's a big stretch. How'd they do that?
No. Yeah, I mean, like, so in both cases, what we get like a big comedy chase sequence of, in this case, Ebisu trying to chase Naruto down to like expand out the chapter, or like Ebisu's guys thinking like, yeah, no, fine, if you think you're such hot shit, then fucking run away from me. Why don't you? I guess I'm not really sold on this as like a particularly impressive display of feat, but it's like enough. It's enough for Naruto, right? Like it's at least enough to make Naruto be like, well, I guess I can't ignore you completely. It definitely doesn't make Ebisu seem cool. There's a moment where he like walks up to like a billboard for one of like Jiraiya's books and immediately gets like distractedly horny and just like, man, keep it together.
Yeah.
This isn't even anything. You just got reminded that a book with sex in it exists somewhere. You gotta have more composure.
Dude.
In that same exact scene, like there's a bit where Naruto is like disguised as like one of the characters on the cover of like Jiraiya's book.
Yeah.
And I guess I didn't realize that you could turn into like a cartoon person with which is fascinating. Like it's whenever they get movies going in this world, it's gonna be so fucking easy to make Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
No, it's just gonna become like fucking VR chat. Everybody's gonna be a fucking anime girl walking around.
Oh my god. Oh, it's beautiful. Nobody else realizes this. Nobody else has really like tapped into the potential of like turning yourself into shit. It's so underutilized.
It's really underutilized.
No, not even as like a combat technique, like just a shit to do for fun.
Yeah. Like, oh, I didn't feel like shaving for a couple of days. Might as well just like go to the store, transformation jutsu, just.
Yeah. I just don't know why everybody isn't doing this shit all the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I don't have a ton more to say about the rest of this episode. Ebisu's like chasing Naruto around. Eventually, he catches them. It's it is like, at least a good enough way to like convince a 12-year-old that he should like listen to you. I guess, and that's that's what it needs to be, I suppose.
Yeah, it's fine. You want to press on?
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
Okay. Making good on an earlier promise, Ebisu treats Naruto to some ramen as they talk about what kind of help Naruto needs. Turns out Naruto is bad at building up and controlling the right amount of chakra for a given task, and the only reason he can get away with such a wasteful technique is his absurd stamina and amount of chakra. They head out to the hot spring to teach Naruto how to walk on water. Naruto starts to get the hang of it when he spots Jiraiya peeking at the women's bath. Ebisu moves in to apprehend, but Jiraiya summons a toad that one-shots him.
Okay. Yeah, so at the start of your summary, you pointed out that Ebisu makes good on his promise from earlier. And I think that is one of the smartest turns for the anime from the manga, because like in the manga, Ebisu never goes and buys Naruto ramen at all. He just like takes out a stack of papers right there in the hospital lobby and starts expositing about shit.
What?
Yeah, right?
It's really cute to have that conversation over.
Yeah, I think it's like such a smart choice for how to like make this, like it makes Ebisu like seem a little more willing to like engage with Naruto when he keeps the promise he made earlier in the episode, which feels like kind of an obvious thing to say, but like it's doing a lot to make Ebisu seem like at least a little better here in the anime.
Yeah.
There is one thing I want to talk about with regards to like him taking out Naruto for ramen, which is like during the scene where he's like explaining shit about chakra and like chakra control and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this kind of bizarre failure to like execute on what seems like such an easy joke, right? Because like you would think the idea is like, you know, he's like explaining stuff to Naruto, and then like every time it like cuts back to Naruto, he would have more bowls of ramen. Like that's what you would think you would do,
Right.
and because that is sort of happening in this scene. But instead, what happens is every time it cuts back to like a shot of Naruto eating ramen at the counter, like rather than there being like more bowls of ramen being placed there while he was off screen, like another bowl, like another empty bowl, like visibly fades into place on screen, and it drove me crazy. I don't know why you would do it like that.
Why would you do it like that? I mean, like, I guess it's to try and like bring attention to it, so you know that all the 9-year-olds watching like notice. But like,
I just think it's like it's just the worst. It's just the worst way to do it of the two obvious options in front of you.
yeah, and like harder to do, like more work to animate.
Like not like a ton more really. Like I imagine you just kind of like you can just kind of like make it like fade in, and it's not like you have to like draw the individual frames of the ramen bowl fading in. But like it's still like you're still like individually compositing like the gradually fading in like ramen bowl.
Yeah, it's still more steps than just having the opaque ramen bowl there the whole time.
Yeah. And I think is like really interesting for an episode that is basically just adapting one chapter of the manga is that they really cut down on Ebisu's explanation here.
Really?
Yeah, like because in the anime he goes right into just like giving the example of like how stuff works for like, you know, Sakura and Sasuke with making clones, and then, you know, explain how it works for Naruto.
Mm-hmm.
See, like in the anime, he goes right to those like immediately applicable examples, and in the like manga, he goes on this big thing about how like, you know, you have your physical stamina and you convert like a percentage of that to chakra, and there's like all of these like weird like numbers and like percentages into like how much of your stamina you're converting to chakra, and you're explaining like the basics of like taijutsu and ninjutsu in a way that just seems like kind of excessive and kind of overcomplicating things. Like I think of a smart thing that this episode does is that it basically completely drops like any talk of like how much like what percentage of your chakra are you using, and just kind of like does like here's like a visual representation with the bars at the bottom of the screen. Like in the manga, it just feels very like it feels very video gamey. It feels kind of like isekai light novel esque in a way that like predates that by a lot, where it's just like, yeah, here's your two separate meters of energy that you use, and if they both run out, you die. It's very strange.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Yeah,
I kind of want to go in. I kind of want to go in and read those descriptions though.
Yeah, like it is not like the most like over the top thing, right? But it is like it really caught my attention as like an episode that is already not adapting very much of the comic, deciding to like just sort of completely excise like a page or two of stuff that was in the comic.
Yeah.
I think it ultimately works, right? Like I think just sort of like getting right to the immediately applicable examples like makes more sense, both in terms of like how much you would explain to like how you would like approach explaining this to Naruto, who, you know, is a guy who often needs that kind of like immediate connection to like shit that's being told to him to like really like wrap his head around it, and also, you know, how much the audience really needs to have this stuff said to them.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so after this, they leave the ramen stand, they go to the hot spring, and there's like... So in the manga, we get this like weirdly salacious for Naruto like depiction of a bunch of like naked sweaty women in like a hot springs, right? Like as like an establishing shot.
Yeah.
In the anime, we also sort of get that, but like there are like multiple levels of obscuring the detail on it to where like you know, like, and I'm not even like saying like, oh, I can't believe they censored this for the anime, but like the extent to which they go to where like everybody's covered in towels, and then like there is like this intense steam filter over the entire scene that to the point where all of the detail is kind of completely illegible, just makes me wonder why they left it in at all.
Yeah, like I don't know. It's a hot spring. It's gonna you gotta get primed for the idea that girls.
That's correct. Yeah, you know, maybe it is important to establish that there's girls, or else we never believe that there were girls later on.
Yeah, Like, and, like, I get paring it down for, like, the TV, right? Because, like...
Right, like, I mean, the panel in the manga is, like, it is the sort of thing that you probably would not put in the time slot where Naruto is airing.
Right.
Even aside from broadcast standards. But it is just, like... I don't know, should I like post the image of this? Because, again, I cannot make out basically anything in the images in the episodes to the point where it just feels kind of ridiculous that it's there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, it is basically unreadable.
Yeah, I see a lot of...
See a lot of steam.
I see a lot of steam and, like, hair because it's darker than the rest of them.
Uh-huh.
But, like, yeah, that would have been fine without the huge steam filter. It's like, ooh, that girl has bare shoulders poking up out of the water. What are we gonna do? Cover it with steam.
What are we gonna do? Get that out of here. Anyway, moving on from that. Assuming you're ready to move on from that.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on from that. I'm not getting anything from that.
Anyway.
Anyway.
So, Ebisu is like trying to explain walking on water to Naruto, right? There's this moment where he's like, all right, yeah, obviously you remember when you did the tree climbing exercise, and Naruto's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I've never done this in my life. Which is amazing to me. Like, I guess I don't know how long it's supposed to have been since, like, the Land of Waves exactly. But, like, Naruto presumably knows he can, like, walk on tree, like up trees, because he was, like, just in a big forest where I think he was doing some of that shit. He's just completely forgot that anybody taught it to him. It's just sort of, like, entered the list of things that he's pretty sure he just always knew how to do.
Wait, chakra control? What do you mean? I just curl my toes really hard.
Oh, God. Like Ebisu is just sort of like watching on as Naruto is like trying to like walk on water, and he's like he gets a moment of like acknowledging like, oh, yeah, this is like so hard for Naruto because he's got the nine-tailed fox chakra in him, and that's like messing stuff up for him. But he doesn't really like, he doesn't really like say I don't know, he doesn't really say anything to Naruto about this. He's just kind of like watching on, like, yeah, this seems pretty hard for this kid, damn. And then we cut over to Jiraiya, who makes the worst possible first impression that he could.
Yeah, he does.
It's like, that's pretty rough. He's just he's here. He's the guy who's looking at women while they're bathing.
Yeah, right. And like,
not even saying anything because there's all that steam.
Right.
Like it's doing something for him, I guess. No, it's like I feel like Jiraiya is a guy we'll talk about more next time. But this is not like this is not the best way to meet a character that we're supposed to like.
It really isn't.
Yeah, anyway, then he kills Ebisu, and the episode ends.
Fucking murks Ebisu, that's fine. The episode ends, but
we've got a new ED.
Yeah, we do. Finally, I'm free.
This one's like pretty straightforward to talk about. It's got like sort of like a similar paper doll style to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like it's less and Sakura like facing directly at you and like lip syncing weirdly. And more like, oh, here's like just a bunch of sort of like, super deformed designs of the characters like walking by as like a song I think it's like kind of a bop plays.
Yeah, the song is so much better.
Yeah. The thing is, when there's like a song that like it has like a few words in English that they can like sing along to every time they come up, that's a good anime ending for me.
Yeah, it is. And like I almost don't even care how fucked up all the characters look. The Sakura one looks real bad.
It is an interesting experiment that they've been doing with these endings. I think they'll stop doing this eventually. They're trying something. It's not fully coming together, but
Oh man,
it is less confrontational with the way that it looks kind of rough as like a experimental thing than
the previous one. Are we ready to move on to the third episode?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Episode 53. Long time no see. Jiraiya returns. With Ebisu out cold, Naruto pesters Jiraiya to train him. Even with flattery, Jiraiya refuses and runs off to keep being a sex pest. Naruto persists and eventually runs up on him in the woods staring at clouds. Jiraiya offers a deal. If Naruto helps him be a sex pest, he'll train Naruto. Naruto misunderstands and agrees. Jiraiya bothers more women, and Naruto brings him a big watermelon. Jiraiya finally just says he's after a girl, and in the most uncomfortable depiction of it yet, Naruto does his sexy jutsu.
Okay, so like, there's a little bit I want to talk about with the staff on this episode.
Good, because I'm not ready to talk about the rest of it yet.
Okay, so the main thing I want to say is that the animation director for this episode, Akira Matsushima, is the animation director for this episode, Akira Matsushima, is like another person who is working at Naruto at this era, who like goes on to Ufotable to be like a pretty important like member of the studio as it currently stands. Akira Matsushima will later go on to be like the character designer for the Demon Slayer anime.
Okay.
All of the pretty small like key animator list, like there's only 5 key animators on this episode, and like basically all of them like show up almost exclusively on Akira Matsushima's episodes. A few of them like stick around the show for a little longer than he does, but like mostly they're working as a unit. And I think that like content aside, I think this episode looks pretty good.
Sure. Yeah.
There's like some nice flourishes of animation. Like the characters are like fun and cartoony and expressive a lot of the time, and I think that there's like a lot of I don't know. I think to the credit of the storyboarder Hayama. The storyboard is credit to Hayama Ippaku, who is somebody who is like who only has credits on this show and like one episode of a show that aired like a decade later, which is the sort of thing that like often suggests like, okay, this might be a pseudonym for somebody. I couldn't say exactly who. But like I think there's like a lot of like really nice shots in this episode. Like I think there's a lot of parts of the episode that just like really look really nice, especially once we get into the latter half of it and like we ease off the like heavy air quotes comedy gas pedal.
Yeah.
It settles into an episode that has like a lot of really like nice and comfortable feeling shots. And but yeah, I guess do we want to get into this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's check temperature on Jiraiya, because judging by the way you wrote the episode summary, it seems like you might not feel very positively about Jiraiya right now.
I don't like him yet.
Yeah. I
very plainly described what he was doing in the episode. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, it is. I mean, it is not pleasant, right? It is like just kind of a lot of tired jokes about him like being like a fucking sex pest that just sort of escalate in a way that just feels best to not think about too much at the end of the segment. That we're gonna have to touch on a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This is a bad first showing for the guy, I think. But even in spite of that, there's part of me that's like, I see Jiraiya on screen and I'm like kind of just having fun with it. And like part of that is because like again he gets all sorts of like ridiculous faces in this episode, and a much bigger part of it is that I think Hochu Otsuka does like a great job as Jiraiya. Like I think the performance is just like delightful. He's got this. He's got like this very like ridiculous, self-assured, like dramatic voice, and he's like hearing him just like grandstand in front of like a 12-year-old is very fun. Like just I could just listen to Hochi Otsuka's Jiraiya and Junko Takeuchi's Naruto just sort of like bouncing off each other forever. Like I think those are two performances that like go together very well. And when we get jokes that are like a little bit less about Jiraiya being a creep, I think they like land all right.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there's a bit where like where like Naruto like switches from like saying that Jiraiya's book is bullshit to like they're like, oh, actually I really like it, and he just like puts on this really dry like disclaimer voice about how nobody under the age of 18 can buy it, before like switching back into like a much more mocking tone at the end of it. It's just like I am really torn between like, I think this guy is fun to see on screen except for the things that he's doing.
Yeah, like just give him a little bit more time. Let him stop doing this horse shit, and later we can have fun with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we get like, again, I mentioned this episode, we get like our second episode in a row where we're like extending out like a sequence of Naruto meeting a guy who's going to teach him with like a sort of comedy chase sequence, but this time Naruto is like chasing after Jiraiya and like trying to bother him, and like Jiraiya is just like putting him in pots and putting a rock on top of the lid of the pot as like everybody looks on in like disgust and horror. Which I think is pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty good to do that.
Especially because, like, the next time Naruto sees Jiraiya after that, it's just, like, on sight, he's just fucking hooking shuriken at him.
Yeah.
He's like, damn, if you're such hot shit, this won't kill you, so let's fucking go. Yeah? What's up?
No, I was just thinking about the other things in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is also definitely there's like, oh, Jiraiya sees a woman, then he makes a cartoon face, and then he starts bothering the woman. And it's like, I mean, I do have a few screenshots of things Jiraiya says in this episode that make me laugh a lot, even like out of the context of him being a terrible pervert. Like, I think it's just funny, like abstractly, to have a screenshot of like anime subtitles that say, "No, no, I'm sorry, miss, but what lovely breasts." But like in the context of the episode, he's being like a horrible creep.
Yeah.
Um.
In the dub, they made that line funnier.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do you say in the dub?
Well, he goes to say it, but then he stumbles and like tries to say face and say hands, and then she slaps him.
Okay.
And it's just a funnier punchline.
Mm-hmm. Right, like I don't think him saying that is funny in the context of the anime. I just think it's a funny screen cap to have on hand to send to girls.
Right. Understood.
Like, not just any girls. You understand. I'm not being Jiraiya about this.
No, I understand.
But like, if I ever need to apologize to you, Gwen, I've got it on deck.
Yeah, that's why I said understood.
Okay. I just needed to make sure I wasn't coming across poorly to the audience. I'm probably worrying about this too much.
Right.
We get to the end of this sequence as Naruto finally makes his case successfully to, like, for Jiraiya to teach him, and it fucking sucks. Right, like it is.
Yeah, right. Like
the jokes of like a Naruto does sexy jutsu and then like an adult guy is horny are like never great, but this is drawing so much attention to the fact that like the premise of the joke is like an adult man wanting a 12-year-old to be sexy for him in a way that is just like repulsive.
It's so bad, and the way that Naruto sticks around in the form and like talks and stuff instead of just like standing there in a pose, it's so drawn out and like,
Mm-hmm. It's not great. Do you want to move on to the next half of the episode where Jiraiya is like mostly a little more normal?
Yeah.
Okay.
At a river somewhere, Naruto tries to walk on water for Jiraiya. Naruto obviously has trouble with it and tosses his clothes aside to dry off. This gives Jiraiya a good look at the seal in Naruto's tummy, and he surmises that the 5-point seal added later is tampering with his ability to control chakra, so he undoes it. Naruto tries water walking again and finds it strangely easy. Jiraiya decides it's time to teach Naruto how to control his fox chakra, and has Naruto talk to him about the second kind of chakra he can feel sometimes. Later that night, Jiraiya confronts Ebisu and apologizes for stealing his student. Ebisu explains that the Hokage wants Jiraiya's help with the Orochimaru situation. Jiraiya declines.
So something I was like thinking about like sort of abstractly throughout this episode is like, so Jiraiya's kind of got like a connection to Naruto that like, I mean, we don't really know, like if we hadn't watched Naruto before we wouldn't know the extent of it, but like, I know what happens in Naruto, so I do. And I couldn't help but wonder like I was trying to figure out at what point Jiraiya recognizes who this kid is, because unless I missed it, like I don't think like Naruto doesn't like say what his name is on screen to Jiraiya at any point. He's just kind of like following around and bothering him. Yeah, so, like Jiraiya definitely like catches on to that at some point. Like I'm curious if this doesn't really matter, but like
I mean, yeah, but also to be fair, have you seen the way Naruto looks?
Yeah, no, that's fair. There's probably not that many guys with that exact yellow spiky hair, so like maybe it was just like instantly, and he was like, "Oh, I don't have time to deal with this shit right now." And then he's like, "Well, I guess I can't not deal with this shit right now."
Yeah. Or it could have been like a hunch until he saw the seal on the tummy.
No, I mean, but like, well, once we get into the rest of the scene of like Jiraiya helping Naruto, I think like Jiraiya instantly comes across way better.
Yeah, right. Like that's the thing. That's the part that's cool about Jiraiya is that like Jiraiya is just the dude who's just like not afraid to like not beat around the bush with Naruto and just like actually
like,
help
instantly.
him.
Instantly, he's like, "Hey, you notice how you have 2 types of chakra? Let's talk about that. Like, let me tell you the thing about you that has made everything hard for your entire life that like fucking nobody has talked to you about.
Yeah,
like let's work with that." It's like. This is like long, but I think like I really liked about like Naruto's whole and like about Jiraiya is that like like Jiraiya is like a person who is like like the breakthrough he provides to Naruto is like being willing to talk about Naruto with like what's going on with him, and like being very willing to like meet him where he's at and like come up with like ways that work for him to learn, right? Like, and I think we like get that very immediately and very directly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and like even when like the thing with the seal, right? Like he just notices it and right away fixes it, and he's like, okay, try again.
Yeah, he's like, hey, someone fucking through shit. Like you're probably better at this usually, but like let me get this together.
So that was the seal that Orochimaru put on in the forest, right?
Yeah, I believe the thing is like, yeah, there's the seal that like the fourth Hokage put on there, and then there's like an additional seal layered over it that like is messing with how his chakra works.
That's a pretty funny thing for Orochimaru to do. Just like fuck with this kid's whole situation.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna do some shit to you like poorly on purpose. And the other thing I really like about this like stretch of the episode is like I mean, once the episode like calms down a bit and just like becomes more about like Jiraiya talking to Naruto and helping him out, like we get a bunch of shots where the the background painting starts like really nice and like really well like composited into and like considered as part of like the shot and like how it's framed. I think there's just like a lot of like really pleasant shots. Where it's like, oh, this is like a they just sort of like escalate the sort of like comfortable feeling of like, oh hey, like these two people like feel at ease around each other. Like Naruto feels like he's being like approached on his level, and like it's I don't know, like I think it really like the visuals really escalate that. I think it's like it helps make the scene feel very sweet.
Yeah,
and I like that like it's sort of like a penance for like expanding out the Jiraiya being a creep so much. We get like an extra scene of like Naruto and Jiraiya just sort of like chilling in like the hot springs at the end of the episode and just having a good time, and neither of them are trying to be like Jiraiya's not trying to be like a freak about women at all. He's just like having a good time with this kid. All right, it's nice.
It is just nice. Like it's just nice.
And after that, as they head back into the village, I think we get like another scene that like highlights another way that I think Jiraiya is pretty interesting. Right where Ebisu comes up to talk to him, and you're like, hey, there's like some Orochimaru shit going on. Are you here to help with that? And Jiraiya's just not really here for it, right? Like, Jiraiya is, I think, interesting and kind of unique within the position of Naruto in that he is a character who is, I think, pretty unambiguously heroic, but not really primarily motivated by a village necessarily, right? Like I think he's always like so much more personally motivated than like having a specific tie to the Leaf Village. And like maybe I'm just wrong about this, and like when I watch it again, I'll be like, oh, I was just remembering wrong. But like, I don't know, he is just like a guy who is not invested in like his investment to the world is like so much more in these personal ties that he has than any like political affiliation. He is a guy who. Like, this will come up later, but, like, he is a guy who specifically does not want to be Hokage, and, like, by this point probably has had the position offered to him, like, at least once, and, like, will happen to him again later. And, like, he just, that's just not what he's about. Like, he just doesn't care about that.
Yeah, he just wants to write his titty books.
Just wants to write his titty books. He's got other things he's invested in, but, he's primarily talking about his titty books as his,
He just wants to look at frogs and write his titty books.
You should write frog books. I think that would be great.
You should write frog books. Are we done here?
Yeah, I think we're done here.
Okay, what are we watching next week?
Next week, we are watching episodes 54, 55, and 56 of Naruto.
Nice. Really funny if we were watching those episodes of a different show.
Yeah, we're just mixing it up.
Yeah. But hey, do you like the podcast? If you want to, support the show and make sure that we can keep hosting and like keep this going, check out our Patreon. That is patreon.com/Konoha Crush. That's all one word, Konoha Crush. Any images we talk about during the episode can be found on our Twitter at Konoha Crush. All one word, Konoha Crush. I'm streaming on Twitch now. You can check me out. That is twitch.tv/ResiArt.
Yeah, you should totally stop by. I'm like usually hanging out in the chat. I might I might be showing up on the stream sometime if you want more of this dynamic.
Yeah, and like other friends come too. Like it's fun. It's a good time. Yeah, usually I'm drawing, but sometimes I might play games. Who knows? That is twitch.tv/Reziart. That is REZIART. And you'll find links to it on my Twitter, which you can find a link to on the show's Twitter. So you know what, you'll find it. I believe in you.
Yeah, I don't have shit to plug. I don't do anything about this podcast.
Yeah, but hey, thanks for listening, and remember, there's no such thing as filler.